Hey, what's up, Metasport coaches? Hope you all had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's been fun seeing you guys back on the field, getting everybody going again. Looking forward to traveling down to the upcoming tournaments, seeing your teams play. If you need any support, be sure to reach out to me, Christian or Britton. We're happy to help. With that said, I just wanted to put a quick little module together to go over some task design, so training activity design. Try to really help give you guys some resources for um, the space we have in indoor and some ideas there. So, with that said, see if I can get this going. All right. So, today we're going to talk about task design. In short, designing activities based on this constraints led approach method. So, the objective is we want to improve coaches' ability to design activities that maximize skill transfer from practice to game situations. So, whatever you work on in training, we want to see that it has the most effect on your players' behaviors when they go into their next match. Help coaches understand the pros and cons of different task design. So, in short, it comes down to what is good task design and what's poor task design. Good task design is specific to the game. Uh, Keeps a lot of the context of the game. So opposition, direction, ways to score, consequences, and the four moments of the game. It's individualized for players. So there's not one set solution. Your players bring their own experience, skill set to the table. So it allows for players to solve problems on their own. There's ways for activities to be progressed, progression through challenge. You can also regress activities if the challenge is too high. And the ultimate goal is that it maximizes that transfer, so it has the most effect on your players. Poor task design, it's non-specific to the game or isolated. There's context missing from action, so dribbling through cones, like standing in a box, teaching players moves. They don't actually know the timing of when to pull the move or what the purpose of the move is. Where if I add a defender, I've got to pull the move to try to get into space, or I've got a zone I've got to dribble into, something like that. Some activities are too complicated or boring for players. So if you have way too many rules, it gets confusing. If there's long lines, players tend to get bored. And a lot of these activities have minimal transfer to the game because they're missing that context. So, what is the constraints led approach? It basically comes down to, in the simplest terms, it comes down to what a player perceives is how is it what they perceive tells them how they're going to act. So perception and action, and we're going to jump into that next. So, going to watch this short little video.
Ecological psychology is the idea of perception action coupling. I touched on it briefly in the affordances video, explaining how the environment creates behavior and those behaviors affect the environment. Perception action coupling is a loop. First, we perceive. This perception leads to a force field where information initially perceived constrain the output of the skeletal-muscular system and therefore action. We then perform an action. As a consequence of such action, changes occur in the flow field. In the case of visual perception, this is a different optic array or field of vision. Changes to the optic array or changes to an animal's field of vision as an animal moves around the environment directly impact on how they act. The quote from Gibson, "We must perceive in order to move, but we must move in order to perceive," really sums up this process. An example in real life could be something like walking through a massive crowd. You're racing to get to the front of the pack, so you're moving throughout. You initially perceive whether you should walk, jog, or run, and the direction you should move. Maybe there is a gap in the crowd. As you start moving, and depending on your speed, you'll perceive the next action differently. You may find a different gap walking than if you were running. A football-related example could be when finishing. The speed and the direction you are moving, whether you have or do not have the ball, your body position, the size of the touch that you have before you strike the ball, and whether you're dealing with pressure from a defender are all actions that impact on your perception and therefore your next action. Let's look at this finish from Messi as an example. The speed and the direction that he arrives at the ball, along with positioning of the goalkeeper allow him the opportunity to perceive and perform the chip finish. What implications does this have for coaches? When designing practice environments for players, it is important to provide all information that would be present in a game situation. This is because it is constantly used within the perception action loop. Ultimately, our goal as a coach is to help our players to be able to perform actions within the game. But this cannot be achieved if players are not put in environments where important information is not available. Thank you for watching.
So I think that's just a pretty good illustration of understanding that within activities, we want our players to be able to actually see what's on the field, see the situation we're setting them up in, and then they're going to act on what they see. And that's more important than, say, if I'm trying to teach my players a pattern to get to goal and they get really effective at the pattern, and then all of a sudden I throw a defender in that, gets in the way of the next pass. It's going to catch them off guard. Are they really prepared to solve the problem in the game if I'm not keeping it realistic to the game?
Standing.
So, jumping into this a little deeper, the constraints-led approach comes down to basically 3 constraints. So, there's the player constraint. That's the individual person. We'll dive into kind of what that looks like a little bit more. There's the player, the environment, and the task. So, environment. I guess here's all the examples. So the environment's your playing surface, weather conditions. Are you on turf? Is it rainy? Is it snowy? Is it sunny, hot? How many players are there? And especially in indoor, thinking about your available space and available number of players. So if you got players missing, how is that going to change your task design? Individual constraints. Their physical capabilities. Are they fast, slow, tall, short? How does that affect their decisions as a player? What's their motivation? Do you have a team that everybody's like go-getters after they're really motivated on winning? Do you have a team that's just learning the game and they just like having fun with each other, right? That's the different motivation levels is really going to change their approach to the game. Task constraint. So thinking about what I always start with, what's the objective? So, okay, my objective of the day is I want to teach the kids how to score goals. So what rules and scoring systems am I going to put in place to encourage that? Time restrictions. If I play shorter matches, does that raise the intensity of the players? If I play longer matches, when do they wear out and the quality starts dropping off, things like that. Spatial boundaries, again, where we're tight on space, but do I adjust to a half field game to encourage more shooting? Do I use the full field? Things like that. And then number of players for activities. So one thing I want to touch on with this number of players, especially while we're indoors right now, just because of the size of the space, I've seen a few coaches run activities that are like 7v7, 8v8, and it gets really challenging with the space to give players good reps on the ball when you add that many numbers. The ball tends to kind of get stuck and it's pinball, and there's certain players that are able to hide. So I just encourage you to think how you can make activities probably no larger than 5v5 through the winter. That might change if you have 2 fields and can adjust, maybe use basically 2 halves of a field and go one way. You might be able to add numbers, but with just the one field, it's really hard to get larger than 5v5 and have effective topics. So when we design these activities, the whole thought should be, are we designing activities that allow opportunities for soccer actions to emerge? So within that, again, it comes down to players being able to have autonomy over their decision making. And that doesn't mean we just start an activity and let them play and kind of let them go out and either sink or swim. If they're sinking, you go back to, okay, what's the task? How can I guide them to start achieving the task? How can I guide them to start achieving the task? And then once they start having a little success, do their ideas come out, and I can keep guiding them. An example I like to think of is if me and my wife are at the dinner table and she asked me to throw a cup away, and there's a garbage can 10 feet away. I might pick up the cup and just throw it from the table. And if it goes in, great. But if I miss, which I usually do, my wife's going to be like, well, why didn't you stand up and walk over and put it in the garbage can? You know, now you've got a mess. And that would be kind of her coaching me through it. If I make it, it's like, great. Yeah, you did it. But so that's kind of the same as coaches. I let them start. I see where they're at. Okay, their ideas aren't really leading to the soccer interactions that we wanted. So can I guide them to it? And sometimes maybe I do give them the answer, but can I ask questions or set up examples to really guide them towards that outcome we're looking for? So again, when designing your activities, start with the task, and that's your anchor. Second, try to avoid over constraining. If you put, again, too many rules. So if I have a session on scoring goals, and let's say specifically I'm looking to finish off a cross. And so I ask the players, you know, they have to play each wide player before they can go to goal, because I think that's going to get them to get into positions to cross. And so they keep trying to play the wide players, but it leads to no chances. Okay, I've over constrained it. Um, and I'm going to have to take that rule away. So just things to think about. So I wanted to just share some examples. So drills versus activities. When I think about drills, like I played basketball growing up. I'm sure we've got plenty of coaches play basketball or football. Drills are very prescriptive. Activities are more open-ended and allow for players to make more decisions. So we're going to look at a shooting drill. I'm sure I'm guilty of running this. I'm sure many are. And I'm not like knocking you for it, but just want to go over kind of the difference between a drill and an activity and what the benefits are. So player dribbling through cones, line of players at the top, they shoot, and the next one goes. We've all seen it where maybe the coach stands here, ball's played to the coach, they lay it off and shoot. And I understand there's still times I pull this one out. You don't have a lot of time at tournaments before you get on a game. You don't really have time to set up, and like it's pretty quick to just get going. So I'm not saying never do this, but I would avoid doing this as much as possible, especially when it comes to training, because you have an hour to an hour and a half, and this isn't the best use of your time to get the most out of your players. So when we look at this, thinking about the four columns to player development, if you're familiar with it, there's technical, tactical, physical, and psychosocial. So technicals, individual skills, dribbling, shooting, passing, tackling, etc. Tacticals, like game understanding. So, you know, what's their objective with their position, role, things like that. Physical, yep, jogging, sprinting, change of pace, strength, all that stuff. Psychosocial, kind of how they interact with their teammates or problem solve, what's their motivation, things like that. So with that first activity, you see they get some repetitions, dribbling and shooting. It's not really any tactical decision making going on. They might jog a little bit, a little change of direction, but it's all just the one person. So I mean, maybe motivations in there, but there's not a lot going on. Pros, they get a lot of chances to shoot. If the game's going quick, kind of depends on how many numbers you have. Sorry, if the drill's going quick. If you have a long line, by the time you get through everybody 2 or 3 times, that's like 10 minutes. So that's a lot of time for 3 shots. The cons are you're missing that environmental context. So players might have they might look really good at shooting when there's no pressure on, but what's going to happen when you add a defender? So really important to kind of keep that piece in mind. How does that change their effectiveness to score? Okay, so now we're going to look at an activity we could do instead. And we'll talk about a few ways we could change this. So I started with a 2v1. So just to explain the game, I've got my boundaries. Gray's shooting on goal. If yellow wins the ball, they try to play a pass to the coach or dribble over this white line at the top. Before we get into the activity, if I have a newer team, I might just make it a 1v1 and start the defending line right here with the 8. And it's just kind of an ultimate, see if they can get there and stop them from shooting. They dribble in and shoot, and I can adjust how far or close the players are to the goal. And then I'd probably add from there. So 1v1, then I make it a 2v1, and we'll kind of see how that goes. So keeper gets the ball, the game's not done. So the game's free flowing. So now going back to that 4-pillar model, within this activity, you see players have a chance to pass, receive, dribble, and shoot. And on the opposite side, players get a chance to defend. So there's tackling, intercepting, things like that become present. Game like I said, it's free flowing. Keeper gets the ball, the game's not done. It's not done until the ball goes out of bounds or a team scores. Decisions are based on the area of the field. So this is a little bit like, maybe one center back going up against a forward and a center mid, or 2 forwards, which if you're playing 7 aside, 9 aside, you might see that quite a bit. Physical, there's a chance to sprint, jog, change of pace. Strength, I've got to hold a player off, change of direction. And now players are getting to work together, so they'll start learning some verbal and nonverbal cues. I've got to demand the ball when I'm open. Maybe I start teaching my players, hey, if I got a chance to run forward, I point because I want it in front of me, or I want it at my feet, things like that. So pros, this activity gives context with game cues. So they're going to see realistic things that they would see in a game. It's like a kind of a microscope of a small moment that's happening in the game, just zoomed in. Cons, I mentioned it a little bit, but maybe if I've got a lower level team that really struggles, just with the basic dribbling, passing, shooting, they struggle to get shots away. So in a situation like that, I mentioned I could start the defenders up here. I might even start them farther away to give them more time to dribble and get a few successes before I start bringing them in. So here's a way we can now progress it to make it more challenging. So they're having a lot of success. We might make it 2v2 here. Rules are all the same. Yellow wins it. They try to go over the line or connect with the coach. Gray's still going to goal. So pretty standard. If I wanted to make it more challenging, I'm going to go back to that at the end just to give an idea when they clear out here. Okay, if I wanted to make it more challenging, something I could do is maybe add a 3rd attacker. And I could drop like a dot. Since we're indoor, we have the dots. Maybe around right where the top of the box would be. And start with the 2 defenders kind of representing center backs, one maybe marking. So I could make it 3v2 that way, or they have to start with a pass into the forward, or they can dribble in. I could make it 3v3 with a recovering defender. So I've got I think I can annotate this if I can figure it out. So yeah, I could put another attacker there, and then I could put a recovering defender here, and these 2 players would start. I'm gonna just have them be squares since I haven't quite figured out Zoom yet, but so I could start with 2 defenders, 3 attackers, and a 3rd recovery defender coming from behind. So when this ball's played in, that springs this player going. So if we can move fast, once this ball's in and these 3 go, if we move fast, we keep it 3v2. But once this player recovers, it becomes a 3v3. Just an idea there. All right, gonna look at just a few more activities. All right. So when we get into passing drills, I've seen this one quite a bit. Again, I'm guilty of running all these. Um, it's good for, they get repetition under no pressure. Uh, you can start coaching those little technical pieces, back pedal, receive with your farthest foot, really dial in your technique. But the problem is, again, I've got no pressure to make a pass. Can I still execute the move when we add a defender? Same thing with a little passing pattern here. So they get lots of reps. As I mentioned earlier, if I do a pattern like this, maybe I have it end going to goal. What happens when I add defenders? I might start seeing the pattern on the field, but then a defender steps in the passing lane and my players are like, oh, we haven't trained for that. So just one last thing, looking back at this one, a really easy way to change this one to make it a little more effective, and you can adjust the space, but instead of having the players on the cone, just make it a 4v1 rondo and each player is on a line. And then you got a defender in the middle. And now the players have to move on the line. So they're still going to work on change of direction, maybe backpedaling a little bit. You can still coach all the same technical points you would. But now, okay, if the defender cuts off this pass, I've got to go the other way. So I have to make decisions based on what's actually happening in the activity. It's not prescribed. So the players have the freedom to make those decisions. Going back to if you have a team that a little lower level, make the space bigger. Give them a little more time. A little more time and space. If you've got a team that needs a little more of a challenge, you can make it 4v2. You can decrease the space. You can put touch limits on. Hey, you got to play 2 touch, 1 touch, things like that. So just really easy ways to adapt things we're already doing, but to add that element of opposition, a defender, an objective, things like that. So now we're going to jump to a activity. Oops, let me hurry and erase that. Okay, so activity 2v2 plus 2. Green and gray are competing in the middle. They score by going from one target to the other. So whichever team has possession, they pass to this target. They try to get the ball back and play to the other target. If their movements open up a gap between gray, targets can play target to target, and that would be a point for them. So just kind of look at that one quick. Here's what it looks like. So think about the box activity or the box drill we saw before. In an activity like this, players have to backpedal to open up to get into space to create gaps for the ball versus the drill where they backpedaled because the pass was going to come to them next. It was prescribed. Here they have to do that if they want to create space from a defender, or if you as a coach trying to coach them to receive with the furthest foot. Hey, I want you to backpedal so you can see the ball and see where you're going with the ball. Once it hits one target, the direction changes. So one more time, in this moment, green has the ball. So this player, I want you moving out to this sideline as quick as possible, but you want your hips facing the field so I can see the ball and I can see where I'm going. Because once it hits here, the direction changes. We go this way to score. So there's a lot of direction change in this, but it gives you a lot of opportunity for technical repetition. Like I have to get the players in positions where they can see the ball and where they're going. So you're going to have to learn to open their hips up. As a coach, I would hound them as much as you can. Receive with your furthest foot. Some coaches call it back foot, front foot. Furthest from the ball makes sense to me. Wherever the ball is, if it's behind me, trying to go forward. If it's in front of me, receiving with the furthest allows me to see the whole field. And then just really quick, so the cons, mentioned a lot of the pros to it. The cons, if you've got a team that dominates, the other team kind of misses out on those technical reps. So you as a coach have to find ways to kind of fix that, whether you change up the teams or you try to coach them to win the ball back. again, where the 4 moments are present, you can coach both the attacking and the defending side of the ball here. So if green had the ball a lot, I'm going to start guiding these guys to cut off the middle, try to force it to an area where they can trap the ball and win it, and see if that helps. And if it doesn't, maybe then I'll mix up the teams. To make this more or less challenging, you could go, your younger teams could play 1v1 plus 2. So I just take out, let me annotate again. I take out these 2 players and I probably reduce the space a little bit, but now just the 9 and the 4 are playing in here and they've got to get open and play across, things like that. Still, the rules are the same. If I want to make it more challenging, I could just add another green and another gray or black. And now it's 3v3 plus 2. If you've got odd numbers, you could throw a neutral in. So now it's 3v3 plus 3. And then you've got your 3 teams. So you play a 90-second to 2-minute bout, and then you switch out your targets, things like that. Changing the space is going to make it more or less challenging. So maybe in the 3v3, they're getting really successful in the 2v2. So I go 3v3, but the space is too tight now. Instead of dropping numbers, I just make the space a little bigger. If I want to improve their ability to complete like combination passing in a tight area, I might tighten up the space. So again, just things like ways you can adjust the activity to still bring out the challenge or make it easier to build in a little success. All right, moving along. I'm going to come back to this one. We'll go here for a sec. Okay, so I wanted to share an example of like a 1v1 activity coaches could do. So again, I've seen coaches, and I'm guilty of it, trying to teach like different moves in a 1v1. So they'll dribble at cones and pull moves, and everybody just stands in a line and goes through. So found this activity, ran it with a couple teams, but it's really easy to set up. You've got 2 gates, so you can use the width of the field. Just put these by the sidelines. A line with players with balls, a defensive line here. Player dribbles at the cone. They got to get within a step away. Defender meets them at the cone, and then this player can go either way. But once they make a decision, the defender tries to stop them from scoring that goal and goes the other way. So we'll see it here. And I cut this up really quick. This was an activity that I ran with Kelly and her 13s. I think we took about 12 to 15 minutes to get through it. We did about 2.5 minute sets. So the players just got reps for about 2.5 minutes, where we would just observe, coach in the flow, and then based on our observations, it would inform our coaching points. So I clipped a few pieces so it wasn't so long, but we'll just look through it quick. Ready, go. Get 6 lines each side. Can you get to the other line? Battle. So on the first set, players who get to the cone, they pull moves, but once they pull the move, they kind of let the attack or the defenders get back in front of them. So side out, fake out. Avery, what do you think? Okay, body feint. Good. Once you make a decision to go one way, how can you beat the defender over the top? What do you need to do? Okay, if they're close, they can use my body inside. You can try to shield your way there, but is that very effective? Okay, so I just pulled a move. Just decided to go one way. The defenders maybe a step behind. Right.
Accelerate.
When you guys pull a move, I want to see that explosivity. Get over the line as quick as possible. Next one. So they'd play for about 2.5 minutes. We'd bring them in for about 1 to 2 minutes tops and then get them playing again. But within that interaction, that might be an area where I give some examples of moves. So I just asked the players what they could do. They came up with body feints and moves. Maybe if I've got a newer team, I demo a move or have a player demo a move and encourage them to try it. So that might be the time where I kind of get to teach like a specific prescribed move and encourage them to try it, but I still give them the freedom to pull what they want. So now the main point was when they get to the cone, can they accelerate and get over the gates?
Slow. Good. Get over quick. Yes, well done. Next one, go.
And jump in this time.
So in this set, the attackers started having a lot more success.
Next one, go. Hey, go, foul. Get it over. Go. Change your pace, Avery. Come on. Now we're going to talk about the defending side.
So because there was a lot more success, I wanted to try to increase the challenge. And because there's the attacking and defending moment present here, I decided to coach the defenders to try to make it a little harder, make the game more predictable for them.
Right. They've got 2 goals to score on. Okay, and they can go either way. So how can we make it a little more predictable? Good, good. So hey, he's right. I want to try to force them to go one way. So I want you to think about when you approach the cone, how are you going to shape up? Get side on, right? And do you want to get there before or after the attacker? But said, if I get there after the attacker, I'm going to score, right? But now you have to approach quick, get side on one way or the other, and make sure they can't come back towards you. Okay? All right, let's see it. Let's go.
So again, I cut this up. It took a little while for some success, but I wanted to show an example of, okay, we've set up an activity. I don't want the players to, or I want to make sure that I have an effect on their behavior. So players were doing a better job, at least cutting the field in half, but we weren't winning the ball. So I want to try to do a freeze moment and walk them through how to win the ball. So that same, you as coaches, right? Like observe, but then make sure that you have an effect on the behavior.
Basically standing like this, so he can go right, left. There's a little behind me. Okay, I know how bad that would suck. Okay. So, I need to shake. You want him to go out and so side on. You can get right to the cone. But bend your knees a little bit. Now, as soon as he gets in and decides to make a decision, he starts seeing movies. Good job getting side on, and then we're just letting him go. Now you want to get where you can get a hand on him, up behind him, hand on him, and when he takes that first touch, in between getting the ball. Does that make sense? Okay, Avery, let's try it again.
And now you're going to see that not every coaching point or coaching freeze comes off, but it did start seeing players start winning possession. I think this next one, you'll see it. Gets an arm in. Good. Might be a foul. Might not. I let him get away with it in training, but at least trying at least there you could see, hey, the freeze had an impact on the players and the behavior started to change. So just one last thing with this activity. Again, you want to make it progressively, you want to find ways to progress it and make it more challenging. So things I could do, maybe I move the gates instead of them being here, I put them like up here. Not a great drawing, but now the defender's at least in a position where he's already in front of the attacker. So now the attacker's got to try to get around. The rule could be the same. Once I get to the cone, I make a move and I try to go. That's something I could do. I could put the gates on this side. And I could add the defending line right next to the attacker here. And maybe this becomes the coach. And the coach has all the balls. And so the attacker checks for the ball with the defender on their back. And now they've got to they receive and they've got to try to turn and get to a gate. So there's loads of different ways to progress this. And I'm happy to, if you have questions or are interested in some of these, just let me know. So try to move along here. So I hope this is kind of giving you a better understanding of why we believe in this. It's important because it creates the environments that the players are going to face in a game. And so if they've already seen those moments, seen all they're never going to see all the possibilities because the game's always changing. No decisions ever the same. No moments ever the same. But if they've been in a situation that replicates a lot of the chaos of the game, they're more prepared for when they're in an actual match. So that's our whole hope behind this. The other things we really love about it is it allows players to problem solve based on their abilities, enhances decision-making skills, promotes creativity, as you saw through the interactions that I had with the players. I asked the players questions, and then based on their responses, I might try to guide them a little, but I never said this is the one way to do it. This is how you have to do it. No, your objective is don't let the opponent score. Your objective is score. This is going to help you prevent that. But you've all probably got players on your team that, like I have players that are just naturally good at winning the ball, and they don't always defend in the proper manner, but like the proper technique. But somehow they just have a knack for winning the ball, and if I try to correct it, I just put them off. It's the same as like if somebody tried to correct Steph Curry's shooting technique, he wouldn't be Steph Curry. So there's things you can do to guide to help them be more successful, but you don't want to take away that player's creativity or what makes them them. Okay, so the last thing, we'll just go through this video. Just kind of see the
compare
difference between
an isolated activity
an isolated
with a constraint-based
and a
activity,
constraints
using the theory of affordances
activity.
to underpin our justification.
Hopefully
Just so we're all on the
clarifies a
same
little
page,
bit.
isolated activities are activities or drills repeated within an environment where there is limited solutions and are explicitly taught. We give players the how. Constraint-based activities, activities designed through the manipulation of environmental, individual, and task constraints to develop implicit emergent behaviors. Here is an example of an isolated ball mastery activity, using cones and poles as points of reference for movement. In this activity, players have been asked to dribble the ball around the poles without hitting the cones. The aim is to get around all poles as quickly as possible. Players have been given explicit instruction to keep the ball close by taking a touch every step and to only use the right foot. Ultimately, what we can see is players perceiving and acting with reference to the poles and cones and also the explicit instruction given by the coach, both things which are never present in the game. Here's an example of a constraints-based ball mastery activity, using an opposition player as a point of reference. In this activity, players are split into two roles. One person is a tagger and the other a runner. The aim of the runner is to avoid getting tagged for 15 seconds. The aim of the tagger is to tag the runner. Both players must be in possession of a football. The environmental and individual constraints stay the same. The task constraints have been manipulated. The size of the playing field, the number of players, the limited use of goals, and both players having a ball, along with the rule change of not being able to tackle and rather having to tag. One key to the motor learning theory that we have discussed is affordances. These are opportunities for action within the environment. Importantly, the learning is in finding these opportunities for action or becoming attuned to affordances. In the isolated activity, the environment players are placed in is static. We have a bunch of cones which do not change. The players have been given explicit instruction to only use the right foot and to take a touch every step. Opportunities for action change slightly, but because the environment isn't dynamic in nature, there is a limited need to search, limiting the use of the perceptual system and ultimately limiting the amount of learning opportunities. In the constraints-based activity, the environment players are placed in is dynamic. There is a tagger present that acts as pressure. Players are given freedom to use any type of ball control, and you can see different uses of the foot, different size touches, different body positions, and even varying uses of speed. They are constantly searching for opportunities within the environment to act. The perceptual system is highly active as the players move away or towards their opponent. Ultimately, the point of this video is to provide justification for constraints-based learning. The key point is providing players with opportunities for the high use of the perceptual system through a need to attune to affordances within the environment. I hope this video was informative. Please let us know if you have any feedback.
So again, just to kind of sum that up, or one of my biggest takeaways when I watch that, and when I watch isolated activities versus something that's constraints led, when the players are dribbling through the cones, they're like really focused, but it just doesn't look as fun to me. And when you watch the tag game, both players are moving. There's a lot more movement. So they're getting more. If you think about that four pillar model again, they're getting a technical piece. They're getting maybe not so much the tactical piece in a 1v1, but they're getting more of the physical elements, change of direction, change of speed, agility, things like that. And their motivation, that psychosocial piece, right? My motivation changes from I'm trying not to hit cones to, oh, I've got to avoid, like, I really don't want this player to tag me. And how much that in turn leads to players having fun, which motivates them to hopefully stay with the game. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of sum everything up here. This is a method. So when I came to Meta, this was all new to me, and we were lucky had Marco Sullivan come out 2 years in a row for the retreat, and I kind of dove all into this. Sometimes you get a little bogged down with the language, ecological dynamics, affordances, things like that. But really, I think it just comes down to when you're designing an activity, there's four things I like to keep in mind. Does it have direction? So each team has a direction to go. And the direction, like I say, in the 2v2 +1 or like different rondos, the direction can change a little bit, but for the most part, there needs to be direction. Is there opposition? And what are the ways of scoring for both teams? So if it ends when the goalkeeper gets the ball, your attackers never think about, oh, what if the center back gets the ball? Or they don't practice that. They're going to do it in a game, but they've never been really practiced in it. So a lot, and then think about the motivation for the defenders as well, right? If you do like a 3v2 and every time there's a shot that the keeper saves, the game's just done. Like, oh, I'm a defender, I never get a chance to attack. So again, direction, opposition, ways of scoring, and I kind of tie this one in. There's consequence. So, if I have the ball, I can score. That's the consequence for you. When you get the ball, you can score. That's the consequence for me. So, I hope this helped. I'm gonna share the slideshow with you. Share the Zoom call with you. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to come out and work with you guys. If you need help designing activities, reach out to me, Britton or Christian. That's what we're here for. So thanks, guys. Looking forward to seeing everybody. Let's go Meta.